Right, so a couple of stories to emphasise the importance of motivation as we move forward and to help you understand its role in business really. So I had an example of a marketing lady that worked for an organisation, top performer. As a result of her performance, they rewarded her with a bonus, increased pay, and they gave her her own office. And then 6 months later, her whole motivation had gone. She was underperforming and she was a problem in the organisation. When we mapped her, when we looked at a motivational map, her friend was a top profile. So what the organisation had done inadvertently by rewarding her was taken away her top motivation. And when we put her back in the office, she fed off all the individuals in the office. That's how she got her stories. That's how she got her social media out there. That's how she ran the marketing. She began to perform back to a normal high level. So that's a talented individual that organisation could have missed if we hadn't have motivational mapped. And she was at the point of leaving as well and being a problem to that organisation. Another example of how MAPS is totally different to personality and useful in organisations. I had a top barrister come and see me. His top motivations were, if I remember rightly, searcher, creator and spirit, not in that order particularly. And I just asked him some questions. I said, how much creativity do you have in your role right now? And he says, well, I have no creativity at all. He says, I've got a very rigid process which I have to follow. I said, how much freedom do you have in your role? And he said, I'm a top barrister, I have 10 cases lined up, I've got no freedom, I'm bogged down. And I said, how much of a difference do you make? He said, well, that's the worst one of all. I get known criminals off and I absolutely hate it. So if we'd taken his skills to a headhunter, which was what had happened if he'd left, they would have put him straight back in. So to cut a long story short, he's now a landscape gardener. Do you think his motivations are being fed? Yes, because he has all the creativity, he has all the freedom, and he can make a difference. So it's not about what you do, it's about your energy. And as businesses changes, how can we harness that energy so we can use it in the organisation in a different way perhaps, and then bring more skills in. So there's an example. They've lost that top barrister. They wouldn't have kept him anyway in this situation, but that's just an example of how motivation is so important to making sure we've got the right people in the right jobs, doing the right things with the right energy.
Well, do you know what? It's a brilliant story. I love it. And it just reminds me, just briefly, to say this was in the early days of motivational maps. I met somebody at a network meeting, a woman. She did a map, a complimentary map, and she got a bit of feedback from me. And she didn't become a client and she moved on, etc., etc. About 5 or 6 years later, we received an email from New York where this woman had emigrated and had actually given up. She had been a social worker, which she absolutely hated, and was now a teacher in New York, was as happy as Larry, and attributed this whole change in her career, her destination, everything, to this one encounter with the motivational map. I mean, I didn't give her a lot of coaching. It was just this one-off bit of feedback, 20 minutes maybe, and that was it. But it was enough to open her eyes on a personal level to, I hate social work and I'm not happy here. I think it was over at the Bristol where I did this, at Swindon, Bristol, where I did a lot of work over there in the early days. And she just went out, changed everything. Yeah. And I got this a thank you email. I mean, it's like almost like lost in thousands of these emails you get, but you've changed a life.
Well, motivational maps is a secret agent of change, isn't it? We have to say.
A secret agent of change, yes.
It is.
001.
It is 001 because 007 couldn't keep up with 001. But it's really interesting because that reminds me of another situation I had in an organisation. So I had to go over just before COVID kicked in, November last year, so we had Brexit looming and all this kind of stuff. And I did a group of business owners and I got them to do what you did earlier, James, which is guess each other's motivations. And they were pretty good at guessing each other's motivations, except for this one individual. They could not guess what he'd written down. And when he revealed what he'd written down, they couldn't understand why he'd written it. And here's what happened was they thought he was a creator, a spirit, a searcher, real entrepreneurial profile, fast-paced, and he normally would have been. But he said, that's not me at all. Now I'm defender. And they said, well, why are you defender? That's just totally against your character. He said, well, I'll tell you why. He said, I've just got divorced. I'm going through a very difficult divorce. It's causing me a lot of pain. It's impacting my business, and I can't even buy a house because Brexit. I can't work out when to buy a house. He said, I'm in a real flux right now around my motivation, and it definitely is about security and predictability for the future for me. So that's how quickly motivation changes, and none of them in that room, and they knew him well, had guessed it. Now, had he been working for an organisation, that would have been a problem. So it just goes to show we don't know unless we do the test what's really going on with individuals, and unless we do the diagnostic, how do we really know what's going on?
You're absolutely right. I mean, I could go on with another story. You just reminded me of a story now, but I think we've got enough stories.
Yeah.
I think it is this instantaneous change, and something in your personal life, for example, a divorce, or it reminded me of a divorcee that I suddenly was one minute she was actually married, then she went away to Cyprus for 2 weeks, came back, and she was about to be divorced. Her husband had left her, and suddenly the whole motivational profile changed.
Yeah.
And it can happen instantaneously, but then it affects work, as you say. You go back to work, and suddenly you're not the same person. You can be a real problem.
But it's happening in business right now. I mean, pre-COVID, you might be a builder, making lots of money as a company, very focused on making lots of money, and all of a sudden, let's take the entertainment business. All of a sudden, it's gone. Now you're Defender as a business. You're all about security, predictability, getting through the crisis. So the whole energy of a business can change, not just a person.
Yeah.
It's amazing,
it is amazing
what you discover.
Well, of course, this is all part of the strategic narrative. We deal with this in our book, Mapping Motivation for Engagement. But the whole point about a strategic narrative is so that we have a story that we tell our employees and the public about where we're going and where the journey is. But of course, if the motivators don't support that and shift, we can have a serious block and obstacle to progress.
It's interesting that, because it reminds me of something else we wrote in the book around, you've got your performance triangle with, you've got direction at the top. So you need clear direction, you need the right skills, and then you need the right motivations. But we talked about the younger generation coming into the business world now. It's not about direction and skill for them. It's about actually the business fitting their motivations, being green, all that kind of stuff, ethical. So they'll have and they won't join an organisation unless their motivations are going to be matched. So basically they will turn jobs down. So if your business isn't got the right motivational message for those people, you're not going to attract them.
Absolutely. You're touching on a really profound point about recruitment again, but also too about values. The values of organisations and how these are linked very closely. We've got a lot of work on that in the book as well, but the values and the motivators are very carefully or closely linked and aligned. And again, if we've got the wrong message, we're not only not going to attract the right people or the younger people that you're talking about, but in fact, we're going to put off buyers as well. We're going to put our clients. We're going to put off our clients.
Well, it is quite funny in business, because everybody, if you talk to any business owner, what the thing they struggle with is in growing their business is attracting talent and keeping talent. Yet they don't do the things necessary to attract and keep talent, which is actually manage your talent when you got it and make sure you can create an environment where it thrives. So they all moan about it, but they're not prepared to invest in doing it. And the ones who do invest outperform the others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.